Okay, now in my next one, I'm going to show you how to use the random class. So let's create another main class. I'm going to call it test random. Okay, now random is a class that is built into Java. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use it and how use it to shuffle up an array of numbers. So I'm going to start by creating an array of integers. So in the last video I created an array of lights, which are an array of objects. In this case, this is an array of primitives because int is a primitive. So first I declare it. So even though these are primitives, I still need the array of ints is an object, and I need to instantiate it, and that's what I've done here. Now I need to initialize it because if I were to print these out, they would be the default value of just 0. I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that to you to do. But so to initialize it, let's just put squares in. And so here's how I could fill this numbers. In fact, let's tell you what. Let me here's a little NetBeans trick. It's called refactor. So if I say refactor rename, let's call it squares, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put squares in these things. And here's how to do that. For int I is 0, I less than squares dot length. So okay, so now squares and okay, now let's start with 1. So if I want to start with 1, I've got to add 1 to each of these. So now there's no built-in square function, so I'm just going to take them and multiply them. So here, let's print it out. Okay, so before shuffling again, so before shuffling, okay, this should print the squares from 1 through 10 out on the console. So let's take a look at that. So before shuffling, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, etc. Okay, so that's what I want. But now I want to shuffle them. So let me show you how to do that. We declare a variable of type random. So let me call it randomizer. Okay, so I've declared a type called random, but then NetBeans is unhappy. It gives me the red squiggly of death, and it says it can't find the symbol. Now, when you see this, it's Alt-Enter shows hints, and there's also, see this little light bulb over here? If I click on the light bulb, it gives me some options. I can create a class. I can create a class in another package, or I can add an import, and that's what I want. I want to add the import. And what I've just done is it's added this line, java.util.random, and that shows that random is actually part of the Java implementation. And you see no more red squiggly. So I've declared my randomizer. Again, this is an object, and so I need to instantiate it. So randomizer is equal to new random. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through to each index of my squares array, and I'm going to generate a random index between 0 and 9, and then I'm going to swap the current one with that random index. So here's what that looks like. Okay, so here's my for loop. I'm going to go through each element of that. So first of all, I'm going to generate, and I'm going to use, see what it says, next int bound. Okay, so when I say next int and then give it an upper limit, this will generate a random integer between 0 and, in this case, the length, which is 10. It will include 0, but not include 10, and that's important. All right, so now I'm going to take my index I that I currently have. I'm going to swap it with the one at index. So here's how we do that. We declare a temporary variable to hold it is squares I. Okay, so that's where I'm going to hold it temporarily. Now I'm going to say squares I is equal to squares index. So the randomly generated index is, that value is now both in index and in squares, but I saved my squares in the temp, and so now I can set the value of the index to the temp. And now I've swapped it. Okay, so you see that may not be the most efficient way, but it is a way and it works. And it just requires one pass through and 3 swaps. So let's see what that does. So let's print, say, after shuffling. And then all right, so you see what I've done. I'm just printing it all out, and we see that before shuffling, it was all nice in increasing order. After shuffling, it's all mixed up. And if I were to run it again, I would get a slightly different answer, because what random does if you don't do anything to it is that it basically gives you a different sequence each time. Okay, so that's how to take an array and just kind of mix it up, and that's something that we're going to be using.